and mute your microphone. Write your student number in the chat. If you have queries, send them to ctintat@unisa.ac.za. The meeting will be recorded, and please complete the feedback form. One of the people that I really want to introduce to you is Lizzie Boy. Unfortunately now, because I'm a bit flustered, I can't get hold of her CV, but she is a remarkable person. I can remember at my first ever meeting at UNISA, her work was given to us as an example of how do you plan all your, how do you plan your schedule for a whole semester. And I still believe that's the way to do it. She is the one who's totally in charge of the quantitative research support. And I can only recommend speaking to her before one gets starts with your methodology. It's very important because, and I think when you have to do your research proposal, to speak to her beforehand so that you do not make design mistakes in your application to do research. Lizzie, are you a presenter?
No, Mimi.
I'll send Richard a WhatsApp, then you can just start speaking if you want to.
I think we can wait a little bit until 1:15 and see if more people join, because I think the SMS or the thing came back to say 1:30 and then.
Oh, and okay, I see.
And with yesterday's session as well, starting at 1:30, maybe some people might assume that, because I also thought it's starting at 1:30. That is why I didn't join early.
Okay. Andre said that he's a bit, then he can work for 20 minutes, or you can chat to us. You can decide, Andres, how you want to do it.
No, it's fine. Actually, I can even give a little bit of a background in terms of who I am. And then
somebody else.
Then start with why we're here today. Yes.
That would be a good idea, Lizzie. I'm going to, you can put, I'll take off my video, then you can put on yours.
Let's see if I can put on mine. I didn't put on the lipstick, the red lipstick, so please don't judge.
I think you.
This is how when I wake up, I like this. That's me. Yes. So I can give you a little bit of a background about me. I grew up in Mpumalanga, in the rural deep areas of Mpumalanga, and then I studied at Medunsa at that time. That was long years ago. I did statistics and maths. And then I went on and I did my honors in statistics. And after that, I went into the job market. Then I started working. My first job actually was in the Department of Statistics, where I fell in love with what statistics can offer, because I was working as a postgraduate student assistant and I was helping students with SPSS. So, and that's when I realized, oh, at university, we didn't have time to play around with the tools. We knew that there are statistical tools, but the minute I started working on it, I started doing some of the things that we did in school or in the classroom. Then I enjoyed and I never looked back after that. So yeah, and I see Richard made me a presenter. So in the meantime, while I'm still sharing, I will continue and present. And Yeah, and that's when I realized I fell in love with stats and helping people actually understand the statistics. And that picture on there is not me. You saw me on the video. Yeah, and then years gone by, I worked in so many companies. So my CV is online on LinkedIn. If you need more information about it, it's on LinkedIn. You can Google me, like Elizabeth Lizibui is my LinkedIn profile. I worked in so many different companies. Like I worked at Old Mutual, I worked at Experian, it's a credit bureau company. I worked at UNISA again. So UNISA was my first job as a postgraduate student assistant, but I then also went into other roles. I worked as an information analyst at UNISA in another department. But I worked in companies like Metropolitan and so forth. And in all those roles, I was working as a data analyst. So that's where also the passion came in. And that's why I also realized that I like helping people to be on the same page as me. I don't want to be the only person understanding something. So I like to share with everybody. I joined UNISA as a tutor in 2007 or 2009. 2009. That's when I started tutoring at UNISA in Pretoria. Then I moved to Cape Town in 2012, and I was lucky enough that UNISA Cape Town offered me a face-to-face tutoring, because then I started as an e-tutor, so they offered me a face-to-face tutoring and they never looked back. So it means they are happy with what I do. Then a couple of years going forward, they gave me a post as a facilitator in the quantitative literacy department, which probably also started with me trying to assist all students as much as I can and offering my time, even though they kept on saying, oh, but you are working yourself up to that. I'm like, no, I just want to help all the students to understand statistics. And from that day, we've had a good relationship. And it also helps me to improve in terms of presentation skills, in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis, in terms of how I communicate with other people as well. So yeah, and in a nutshell, which then it's me up to where I am right now, me talking to you about my journey. So since I told you that I have started with my honors and I completed it, but what I didn't mention is in 2016, I enrolled for my master's degree. And like any excited person, knowingly that I love working with data, I got so excited. I registered and we started working. So lucky enough, I enrolled for my master's in statistics and I got a good supervisor. And that is very important at that role, at that part. So I started my master's and everything went well. I submitted my research proposal and it was approved and all the things happened. Then I started with my data analysis, which is the part I enjoy and I loved every bit of it. The problem was when it comes to literature review and writing up, and I'm assuming I'm not the only one, a lot of us, especially if English is not your first language and you have never been exposed to academic writing skills, or you've never been to any centers. So in the olden years when we were studying, we never had this kind of support where if you register and you talk to your supervisor and that's it. And sometimes if you are shy like me and you don't like to ask for help, then you get yourself into trouble. So I am one of those people who ended up being in that boat, and it sank me and I couldn't come out of it. So literature review at that point killed me. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about so that you can understand that I am talking from a point where I know what I am talking about it because I experienced it. And that's what makes me now, with my 2 masters that I'm doing, so which brings me here. I am currently enrolled in 2 masters. I know it's very crazy, but both of these master's degrees are way totally different in their nature. I enrolled in the master's in science in operation research, which is more of your statistics, because I still want to continue doing my statistical work, and I want to get a degree in that, and a master's degree, and mostly pursue my PhD in statistics as well. And the topic of my study for my master's at UNISA is predicting student academic performance using first year experience. And this is building onto the project that I have been running at UWC. And I'm going to share with you all the things that I have done following me after registering for my master's. Then I also, because I enjoy and I love facilitating classes, but sometimes it's very difficult because you need to know some of the concepts or improve in the way you facilitate your classes. So it means even though you can attend courses, but a formal degree sometimes gives some weight because there are some technical things that they discuss in a formal degree that you do not get in a course. So I decided, since UNICEF is offering scholarship, I registered and I'm doing my master's in education. And this is my qualitative research, and that is where my scary part or my panic will come, because since this is a qualitative and is not my strong suit, I've decided to do the modules so that then I write a mini thesis, which probably I will be able to cope with it at the end with all the skills that I have received. In the background, I have been sitting in most of Mimi's classes because I am also trying to learn as much as possible so that I can apply them to my studies as well. So, talking about my research journey, the reason why I chose both of those 2 topics, if you look at them, they look almost exactly the same. So one is predicting student academic performance, which means I'm building a model, which means then I need to decide at the end what model will be best to predict students from to perform better, so that then we can put structures and processes in place to assist students. You can see that everything I do is about student success. Then I chose to do my project in the same manner, looking at first year experience and expectation, but here looking at addressing students' sense of belonging in the classroom. So because I am a tutor, I facilitate classes and I also offer workshops. I want to see how I can better improve this. So I'm using one of these topics, that is the reason coming back to why I motivate between the 2 topics. So for the UNICEF topic, the reason why is because I enjoy doing what I do in the classroom. So, but for me to improve on it, I want to research on some of the key aspects of it. Like, for example, I'm going to look at the the teaching and learning techniques or methodologies or learning styles in the classrooms. So, and that will help me improve on the skills that I do in the classroom, but I want to apply them in my research. And when I look at UWC or the UNISA model, because I work in the business intelligence department where I support students or support the management to make decisions with data and reports, I felt I need to take a topic that is closely related to what I enjoy the most. That is creating models, working with data, and giving people information so that they can make the right decisions and put processes and policies in place. And those were the motivation why I chose those two topics in their nature. I'm not sure if you have any question for me so far.
Lizzie, I
Yes.
want to ask you about your titles. The one is the verb predicting, and that I can see that you can measure. But with your exploration, have you thought of how you're going to measure the exploration?
I haven't thought that much because I thought maybe I could use a thematic analysis by looking at what other people are doing in terms of the learning styles within the classroom and apply that to see if there are common themes that I can pick up from that. So I'm just gonna use it to explore.
Okay, because there's an interesting concept in psychology which they call the imposter syndrome. And it often happens to people who have a low esteem, so a self-esteem. So they always feel that they aren't, they do not deserve good things. So if I have to read your research proposal, that would be one of the words I would look out for, you know. But I suppose you say that you are only doing a mini thesis. So I suppose that whole aspect will be covered by the lectures you attend.
Yes.
Okay, so I just thought I'd chip in and ask that. Sorry.
No problem. Are there no more other questions?
Leslie, I just want to say something. This is Jacques here. I've got some literature that you can use that I used for my qualitative research, and that is when you look at the data analysis or the thematic analysis, that is by Tesh in 1990. It's a very old, but it's a seminal work. And I think there's around about 8 steps that you take. So I don't know whether you're going to use Atlas TI or whether you're going to just code it according to the descriptors or the codes. But I can send you something through on that as well, and that assisted me greatly.
Thank you, Jack. It will be useful and helpful for you, for me as well, because I'm learning to do a qualitative research. I have never done that. And with my previous experience of struggling with literature review, I'm still panicking right now. When I get there, I'm thinking I will cross that bridge when I get there. But I'm assuming with the kind of support we get from this group, or attending this session, it will make things easier when I get there.
Yes, we can also read through it. Some of the verbs that I used was or were to describe, to explore, and to understand my code. So I played it very safe there because your verbs are going to determine what's going to happen in your thesis. And I was very safe in order to use those three to describe, to explore, and to understand. Because I feel that sometimes you overpromise and then your supervisor expect of you to do this wonderful work and then you realize it's actually PhD once you're done with it. So I decided, about 20 years back, I also did a master's and they just gave you a book and a film and you analyze it and you submit it. This time around, I really got into the field work of it and it's very enjoyable, especially if you look at something that you love. So I can also read through it, and I'm sure that Mimi can read through it. And if the others want to make use of me reading through the things, I'm also more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, Sure, I will send it your way. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of my research journey, so I'll be talking about the one side because with the UNICEF, I haven't done so much in terms of the proposal and putting everything in place. It's just at the moment I'm just thinking through what I will need to do when I get to the thesis process. But when it comes to the UNISA one, that's where it gets very interesting because since I've been on this journey before, I needed to change my mindset. Before, I used to have a fixed mindset to say, this is what I need to do. If I struggle, I give up. I realized now I need to change. I need to start adjusting my mindset to start thinking in in a growth mindset. So I need to put it in that growth mindset. I need to change the way I think about things. So what I did previously, I know that there were a lot of challenges that I experienced, and most of the time I used to avoid facing those challenges. I will just give up. I will not answer my supervisor's email, thinking maybe she will be upset with me and so forth. At the moment, I face them, I embrace them, and that's what you need to do. I make sure that even if I did a little bit of the research, I make sure that my appointment with my supervisor, I make sure that I attend that, I address all the challenges that we have, and we discuss them together. And he gives me advice. She gives me all the advice that I will need. Then I go back and I start working. So I don't avoid them anymore. The other thing is I need to put more effort. So I realized that before, because I was working full time as well, and with lack of support, then I saw little in terms of the product that I was producing because I was not putting too much effort onto the work that I was doing. But currently, I made sure that I have also put a project plan in place. So everything has a pathway to say from here, this is what I need to reach. For example, when I was attending Mimi's classes as well, because in the beginning, when we were talking about theoretical frameworks and the methodology and all that, I made sure that I take note and I go back to my research as well and say, on my project plan, where am I stuck with? And I try to relook at some of the things and place them and plan them correctly in order for me to be able to reach my target. The other thing, criticism. Nobody wants to be criticized. Nobody wants to get feedback that is not dwelling well with them. So we try to ignore it, but I am telling you from now on, any criticism, any comment that people make, I take them serious and I relook at things. And that's the only way you can improve either your writing or your work or how you communicate. And that's where you can learn, by embracing the criticism that people give you. The other thing is to always make time and communicate with your supervisor. So before, like I said, I always ran away from my supervisor because I knew that they will be constantly asking for information, and I wouldn't have done anything, so I will run. But for now, if I haven't done anything, I communicate with them and I say, I will make up the time and we make sure that we meet. If I'm struggling with something, I communicate with them. And that's the only way. And if you are stuck, you need to ask for help. And that's where sometimes I like telling also my students that if you are stuck, ask. but sometimes our pride don't allow us to, because we think they will belittle us or they will think that we don't know anything. But now I know if I am stuck, I watch videos. I come back to the sessions. I go back and watch what Mimi said on the videos. I re-look at them and I make sure if I'm going to be stuck, I know where to find help. I will ask. And that's all what everybody who's doing a master's degree or a PhD, you always need to change your mindset. If your mindset was, I can't do something, you need to change it. It has to be, I can do it, and you will be successful. And I can see that I am making a huge progress than the previous time when I did my master's. As compared to this time around, things have been moving very fine and they've been moving very fast in the process. And that is my journey so far. So like I said as well, I don't know if you have any questions or any comment you want to say before I share with you some of the work that I have done. And I've already presented this, so it's not even like it's a secret thing. So I'm going to also share with you. I've presented last year at the ISERI in Spain. So I will share with you one of my research, which also built into the master's work that I am currently busy doing. So if you have any question or comment before I start sharing with you what I have done, I will be more than welcome to hear that. We can even discuss the growth mindset, what challenges you have or you are experiencing right now, and we can talk about that. Any comment?
Lizzie?
Yes, Jack?
I think what is a very important lesson is what you said earlier on, that is to develop a thicker skin for feedback. And I think that as soon as you reach honors level or master's level, there's a part of you that got a lot of tenacity. Um, but I think what you need to do, especially if you're a perfectionist, is to let go sometimes of um, of very harsh critique. Um, Sometimes it's very difficult to listen to someone. Sometimes it hurts. Um, I was at a conference, at a world conference where I presented, I think it was 2 papers. And what was difficult there is when they take you out, when they take you on and they take you out as part of the question and answer sessions. Part of critique is part of a master's journey, and I would always say to students, whatever you do, whether it's honors level or whether it's master's level, you take what you have and you do more. You do more in the sense of cover all your bases. In terms of whatever you say, you've got theories and research to support that, as well as examples of that. And if something is not part of what you believe in, or it's not part of your stance, your position in this research paper, keep that on the side, because that will come in where you kind of rebuttal or refute certain things, and then you bring in that theories in order to say, you know what, I've actually covered both my bases. But I would also say to students is it's very difficult to unlearn and to learn and to relearn at the same on the same trajectory, but just do more. It's like doing a moderator's course. You do more. But there's a hand up as well, Elizabeth. It's of so Namzi.
I see. Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Sonamzi. I think I'm the student that is still at the beginning. I am doing the honors in computing. Yeah, this part of literature review and the writing is really giving me troubles. We have been given a topic, not given a topic, but at least a key word to like a thematic area, if we can put it that way. And I said, so my question was to how do you deal with come up with a topic in relation to whatever been given? What is the basic steps to achieve that? I don't know whether I'm sounding well.
Yes, you sound very well. What I do with the literature review, like if you attended the session yesterday, you would have realized how we do the searches. Previously, when I started with my master's, I didn't even know how to do those literature review. I will go to Google and type in, and then Google will bring me all the documents, and my supervisor will say, but these are not peer reviewed. You need to get the right documents. So what I do now is to go to the databases on the library. And from there, I do the searches, and I always select the peer review. And I use the keywords that are in my title. For example, like the session that we had yesterday, where they said you look at the words, you take the keywords in your title. I use the keywords to search. It can be one keyword or it can be a combination. Sometimes it's useful to use a combination because then if you only use a single word, it might give you a whole lot of other articles that are not related to the topic that you want to do. The other thing that I do is you always have to store your articles because you will need to come back to them at some point. You need to read all of them. So you need to open up a Google Drive or a folder on your desktop and store all your articles. You can store them in a manner that you will remember. If it's keywords, you can store them in the order of their key or in the grouping of the keywords. And if you want, you can use topics. So one might be about, for example, if I look at my topic right now, it's first year undergraduate students unmet university expectations. So I can find an article that talks about expectation but does not talk about experience. So I will create a folder and put all expectation articles in there. And I will find articles that talks about student experience and I put them under that folder. And when you're done, you start reading through them. And that's the only way you can get around a literature review. The only problem comes in when you start summarizing the literature review. And that's the one main other area where in UNICEF, they also teach us how to do an article review and a literature review. And they give us a distinct, clear description of the two, that they are not the same. Article review and literature review are not the same. So in my mind, they both were the same previously, years ago. But for now, since I attended those classes and I now know how to do a literature review. So I think also you will have to search for videos as well and rewatch what Mimi has already taught us on literature review and see how you can best do your literature review. Mimi, you can come in.
Thank you, Lizzie. Derek, what I told the students is when you have to, because what it seems as if they expect of you by giving you a keyword to come up with an idea for research. And in that case, I would first make it very practical and say, this is something that I have. I am going to get knowledge about university expectations and experience. Who will buy that knowledge from me? Because if you start, that's what I learned from my years of reading, critically reading people's papers, that if they can get that balance between what's happening in their careers, as children would call it, in real life, and link it to what's happening in the reflective theoretical framework of a university degree. If you can get that balance, you have it much easier for the rest of your academic journey. I hope my answer helped you a bit.
Yes, yes.
Also,
Well,
Derek, and remember, I've had such cases. If you look at some of the slides we've posted and you want to discuss it, you can write to me at CT in TAT and mark it for my attention. And then we can make a team meeting and we can discuss it kind of face to face with, and I can respond to your answers in detail. And I'm sure Lizzie is available as well.
thanks, Mimi. I'll consider that. I think that will be much more stronger, helpful to me.
Okay. Are we done with the questions? Okay, if we're done with the questions, then I just want to share with you one of the project that I worked on. It follows almost a structure of a thesis. But I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. I just want to highlight some of the things and make sure that Mimi also can comment on how to make improvement on some of the things, because it might help us to learn even more, because I don't have a written report as yet on this one. So I do have a written report, but the written report it looks different to the presentation. Okay, so in the beginning, like with any other research, you start with the introduction. So my introduction was the background of giving what is the status of student success and the environment in higher education as a whole, between now and previous years. So I was looking at how the enrollment have shifted from years back to how it has become in the current years, where we see the shift has moved into more Black people and more people from poor backgrounds gaining access to higher education. And that created a lot of problems, not that the people themselves, but in terms of the gaps that exist within this education system in South Africa. And that gave an introduction to what I wanted to describe at that point. And I also highlighted some of the challenges that we have. And this part of the challenges also I included in the problem statement as well, because then they help to frame the research question that I wanted to answer at the end. And and then in the background as well, I gave the base for the model that I wanted to use, because when we talk about student experience and expectation and success, we talk about some frameworks. Some frameworks have been there forever. For example, the Tinto's model is a framework that looks at student dropping out. And I use this to show a relationship in terms of how students transition and how we can use some of the variables to help and track those students who are at risk of failing. And not in a sense that I want to track how they will drop out, but this framework also helps me to look at what are the key areas that I can concentrate on, that I can bring into the model in order to support the model that I want to build. Then I also bring in the other model, which, because I used the questionnaire, and since I had a questionnaire and the questionnaire had so many questions, and they were not structured in a way that are clearly visible with an eye. You needed to group the questions. And for me to group those questions, I needed to find a framework that can work or fit well with the groupings after I've done the factor analysis. And that model that fit well with that questionnaire was the Lizos sense of transition. So I brought in my background this model so that everybody will understand when I start unpacking the framework at the later stage when I do my analysis. So I give a description, a detailed description of what the Lizos framework is about and what are the key factors in the Lizos framework that I'm going to be using at the later stage, so that then everybody understands the framework and where are the key gap area that I am going to use in my research. Then I also give the problem statement, which also gives the aim of the study, to say, what am I going to be doing in this study? So my study at that point, I was going to investigate the factors. And with that, it came with two sub-objectives. One is to find out if, because I'm talking about the student expectation and student experience, are there any gaps between the two? So the first objective was to find out, is there any gaps, or are there any mismatch? And then the second one, I also wanted to find out if there are gaps, to what extent do those gaps affect student success? And those are the two research questions, or the two objectives that I needed to answer. And they are, yeah, I was putting them as questions, but they are linked to the research objectives as well. And I could have also used a hypothesis testing, because I could have converted the last one into a hypothesis testing and say, I want to test what is this significant, or what are is there a significant relationship between the gaps of student expectation, between the student expectation and experience? I could have used that hypothesis testing to test the question as well. And in my methodology, I needed to explain the research design was an exploratory research design. That is why it brought into, I'm doing a master's because of this. That is why I extended my master's research to do this further, because of the exploratory research that I did. And I explained the instrument that I used. And also what I don't highlight here is, with the instrument that I used, I also did a reliability test to test all the variables within the expectation survey and also the experience survey. And then I also looked at the population of my study and also looked at the sample of my study. And from the two surveys that I did, because they were two separate surveys, so I needed to take the exact amount of students who answered the expectation and match them to those who answered the experience, and that became my sample. Actually, it was my population, because I didn't have to do any sample, since my population of study was only those who answered both of the surveys. And that's how I defined my population of study. Then in terms of the data analysis, then I used the gap analysis, which is a service model gap analysis. And on there, I just took the expectation values and I subtracted from the experience so that I can get the gaps. And from those gaps, I used the t-test to test the significance of those gaps to see whether are there any differences between the expectation and also the experience. And that would answer the question on are there any gaps between the expectation and experience? And to answer the question on to what extent, then I use the correlation and the regression analysis. So where the correlation will give me the relationship and the regression will give me the regression line, which also tells me or will show me if there is any correlation or any relationship between the expectation and the experience. And that was my methodology that I followed. And part of the methodology in the actual document, then I also include also the ethical clearances. So you talk about the ethics, how you also are protecting the privacy of the individual and where you're storing your data and for how long you're going to be storing your data for, and whether you did receive an approval to do the survey in the institution as well. So I include that as part of my methodology as well. And in the data analysis part, then I look at the outcome of the first. Firstly, you start, when you do your data analysis, you start by doing the descriptive analysis, which in this presentation, I excluded it, but you start with the description of your data. You have to describe what is inside your data. So especially in the beginning. So you need to, if you were working with the survey, there are certain aspects before you start doing the advanced analytics. You just need to describe how many records did you have, what is the split of those records, and you create the frequency tables, or you can create bar charts or pie charts so that you can summarize the data so that people can understand the kind of information that you used. Then you start, after doing the descriptive analysis, then you start looking at how you're going to answer those questions by linking them to the answers. So for example, the first one I looked at, looking at the gaps. Remember I had the gaps and the t-test. So on here you will see that here are my, after I've done my factor analysis, which I didn't mention there. So I went and I ran my factor analysis to group the questionnaires, the questions from the questionnaire. And there were 35 questions, you must remember. So all those questions were grouped into 4 categories. One was looking at resourcefulness, one was looking at purposefulness, one was looking at connectedness, one group was looking at capabilities. And all this are linked back to the theoretical framework that I discussed earlier. So when I talk about them, so everybody knows what those these indicators mean, because I have explained the theoretical framework or this in detail previously. Then I do my analysis and I show my gap, because I mentioned it in the report that I will be doing a gap analysis. So I mentioned my gap analysis, I do my gap analysis, and then I do my t-test, because this is a presentation. In a report, you will put the actual statistical table that you will receive, not in this fancy manner, but it will be in the nice formatted academic template where there are no fancy formats. It's just plain table with the comments, and then you write your interpretation of what you see on the results. This is not the discussion part. This is just the results. So I will look at every line and say what the results mean in terms of this line. I only talk about what I see here. I'm not interpreting anything. I'm not saying what it can be, just the interpretation of the table. By looking at whether are they significant or whether are they not significant, because if they are significant, it means there are differences. If they are not significant, therefore it means they are matched and things like that. And then in your discussion, that's where now, going back to your results, but the results just gives you the statistical knowledge. When you come to the discussion, what I do here, you explain in detail what does that mean. What does resourceful would mean in terms of student expectation and experience being met or not met? They are not met, so they are not significant because they are unmet. What does it mean in me? Then I start describing and explaining what it means. It means looking back at the questions as well. Therefore, it will mean that students were not encouraged. They didn't do or they were not encouraged to be an independent learners, and you can explain in detail. And the other thing about it is you also need to support it with the citations or references. So another person, because if you have done your literature review earlier, you would have spoke about some of the things, and some people have already done research in terms of resourcefulness, in terms of independent learning. If they are supporting your argument, you will need also to support your argument in your discussion as well, to say so and so agrees with what you are saying, and if students are not taking responsibility of their studies, so and so discussed it as well, they support this. And if they differ with what you are saying, you also have to say that you differ with that person, or they differ with your research. And that will have been the discussion of. And then you conclude and make, before you conclude, there was one part of it, so I mixed it up now. So when you do your data analysis, so you will do all the data analysis part. So here I've split it into two. So, but you will do your data analysis part. So the first part I did was for one research question. This part is to answer the second research question, where it was looking at the extent of the gap. So here I did the correlation, and I also did the regression analysis. And then you just give the answer as you see the results on your statistical output. You just interpret the results. No discussions. That will be in the part of the data analysis. In your discussion, that's where you can start discussing what was happening. Then you conclude. After doing the discussions, you conclude by summarizing what your research is and going back to the questions that you have asked. There were two questions we needed to answer. Is there a gap between expectation and experience? Did the study prove that? If the study did prove that, then you say it, and you can quote other people who also did the study and found that they were the same thing that you have found, and you discuss, you summarize. Then you also do the same thing to the next question that you asked. This question was asking the extent, so you also summarize that, you answer that question, and that will be your conclusion, or that was my conclusion in this instance. And if there was any research done to support this, then I will say this research supported this study or this research question. So it means I was not alone. But if there was other people who thought otherwise, you also can mention that other researchers found it that the opposite of what you have experienced. And that will be the conclusion of the research. And some research also requires you to do some recommendation. And since this is part of what I do on a daily basis, so I always send back the recommendation, and I just alluded to those recommendations. Then they can form part of the conclusion as well, what you are recommending the next person can do. And also here you can also include some limitation as well of your study, so that then the other people can also read about them. And you can also put the future work. What are the gaps that you saw that you might feel that if the research can add more value, if certain things can be expanded more, and that will be it for the research. And that's why I enjoy doing a quantitative research studies. And that concludes my presentation for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or if you have any comment, feel free to ask. And like I explained yesterday in the session, I'll go back. My strong suit is in the methodology, but in terms of quantitative research, I help students with creating surveys, with the survey design, and I also help students with their data analysis plan, which will go into your methodology part. And I also help students with the analysis, the data analysis, and I also assist in terms of the interpretation if you don't know how to interpret the results. But what I don't do is you have to do your own discussion of your results. You will have to go and write it up and read it. And I can always give guidance if you want help with the discussion, writing up the discussion, because discussion summarizes what you have, your research objective, what you did in your literature review, what you did in your theoretical framework as well. You bring it back into the discussion because your discussion needs to be supported by literature as well. And since you would have read more about your literature and I wouldn't have read more about your literature, then it makes sense for you to be able to write your own discussion. But also when it comes to the data analysis part and the interpretation, I don't write the full article for you. I help you and direct you into how you write the discussion, or how you write the interpretation. But you have to go and write it yourself, because my English and your English and the way we write are totally different. And you don't want someone to say you have plagiarized somebody's work. So you'll have to write it in your own words. And that's it for me today. I hope this was helpful. And I look forward to hearing someone else present next time. Thank you.
I'd like some feedback from you, but I really learned a lot. Lizzie, can you go back to that where you explained about the questionnaire? Can you go back to that slide? One more back.
You mean this?
That one, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, can you see that if you write a methodology and you say, I'm going to use a qualitative survey, compare that to one which you will say, I am going to use a survey based on Lizzio's census of successful transition. And if you are going to weight a certain part, and purposefulness will count this percentage and so on, can you see that you give far more credibility to your methodology than the usual sentence of, I am going to use questionnaires? Lizzie, and then the remarkable thing that you said, that if you want to grow, you have to embrace the challenges. I so often get students from next month onwards where they get their assignments back, and they become worried whether they'll fail or whether they'll get entrance to their masters and so on. And that feeling of it's now very bad, that's the feeling that we actually have to embrace if we want the degree. I can remember I became quite ill during my master's, and I can remember getting up one morning and saying, no, I'm not finishing this. And then you simply have to sit down and start writing the next chapter. But before we get very philosophical about it, any questions to Lizzie about the nature of her kind of research? Then, ladies and gentlemen, we really see a lot of you. On Saturday, I need to go through the ethical clearance with you. And that's quite important, as Lizzie said, because you can't actually start your research unless you have ethical clearance. So that's what we do on Saturday. And then we have worked very, very hard this week. Thank you so much for coming, and have a good night. And please still stay very safe, because I think COVID is now, with the storms, really getting very bad. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mimi, and thank you, Lizzie. Good night. Safe travel.
Thank you.
Yes, good.
Lizzie, I really learned a lot.
Thank you, Mimi. You can see that much of the things I've learned from you as well. So don't worry. I'm learning as well a lot from you.
So what did you learn?
A whole lot of things. You want to, and there's so much that I have learned, especially, see, when I was doing that paper as well, I didn't know how to unpack a theoretical framework. Like I explained with you, do I focus on the whole theoretical model, or do I pick some areas or the connecting areas and I focus on those as my gaps in my research? And yeah, so it really helped, because now when I'm writing up this my master's now, I'm thinking, oh, I go back to my research paper that I did, and I look at it and I'm like, yo, I did it all wrong here, and I'm redoing it in my master's so that then it looks perfect. But I must say, I'm going to send you my my proposal so that you can go through it as well. We're still discussing, finalizing the methodology, but then I will send it to you then hopefully by next week or the week after next. Then I should be done with my research proposal.
But you know, Lizzie, this is the 3rd year I'm working with the postgrads. And I learn so much every year. It's the one class that I can never take an old set of slides and just start speaking. Every time I've learned a little bit, and I need to get that back in.
Yes.
So I suppose.
Yeah.
But I must admit, I like the whole structure of the research methodology.
Thank you.
Beatrice wants to ask something. Her hand is up.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm also learning a lot. I wish I knew all this when I was writing. And I'm also attending now while it's now we at home have the opportunity to attend the master's and doctoral research group of the main campus, and I'm also learning such a lot of information that you kind of thought you knew, but now you're relearning a lot of new stuff. And now,
Beatrice, how do you join them? Because I wrote them an email saying there's a workshop tomorrow morning and I'd like to listen to it, but I
you must
haven't
just
received.
because their platform collapsed, so they started all over again. I must go and check the email address. It's M and D. I must go and look on my computer. I'll send it to you. I don't know out of my head now. I must just get your address. I wrote it down last night.
Okay, I think I'll write to Karen.
Something W or something. I can't remember now.
It's just M and D, masters and doctoral, but just they take the M and the D.
But there's another letter behind it, but I have to look on my email. I'll send it. I've got Lizzie's email. I'll just check if I've got Minnie's email. I wrote it down yesterday evening. Italjam, that's your ETLJIM.
Yes, that's my email. Beatrice,
I'll
are
go
you
to my
studying?
email. I'll go to my email
studying?
afterwards and send it to you both. Yeah.
Okay. Are you studying?
No, I finished my master's